I know that my former colleagues and current colleagues at the Senate will miss him dearly. I think the people of the state of Rhode Island will miss a great public servant. And I think Rhode Island is better off with his leadership as in the General Assembly. So I think that we owe a debt of service to him.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone. We will start with agenda item number 1. The board may discuss and vote to approve the minutes of the meeting of April 8th, 2025. Everyone's had a chance to review the minutes. Can I ask for a motion to approve?
Motion to approve. Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. Agenda item number 2, the board may hear and rule upon a motion to stay filed on behalf of Scott Hurst regarding his appeal from a residency determination by the Hopkinton Board of Canvassers on April 14th, 2025. And Miguel, I think.
Ray has an
Ray,
update
we
on
have-
that matter.
You
Yes,
have an
Madam Chair,
update?
the appellant has withdrawn that motion to stay, so there is nothing to be heard today.
Okay, so
We can pass that from the
we can
agenda.
pass this. Okay, we don't have to take a vote to do so or
You do
just
not.
pass. Okay. Thank you. Oh, I thought you were going to say. Agenda item number 3, the board may discuss and vote to approve the calendar for Senate District 4 special election. Miguel?
Honorable members of the board, after the passing of Senate President Dominic Ruggiero on April 21st, the staff began working with the Secretary of State's office and the Providence and the North Providence Board of Canvassers in selecting a time frame for the special primary and the special election to occur. I conferred with legal counsel Ray McCarshall, determined if it were necessary to conduct a special election within the 70 to 90-day time frame, which is outlined in Rhode Island General Law 1736, because there are several steps that would need to be taken by the Secretary's office and the local board in order for that to be possible. President Ruggiero passed away on April 21st, as we sadly know. His funeral was held on April 28th. On April 29th, per that Rhode Island General Law 1736, the Secretary made the request that the local boards issue the warrant for a special election. In order for the special election to happen in June, July, which would have been a more advanced time frame, for example, these steps would have had to have been taken almost immediately after the senator's passing. Had that happened, the declaration period for the seat would have been on April 25th and April 28th, which was a very small window of time for any potential candidates to have any notice. After conferring with Ray and with the Providence and North Providence Board of Canvassers, as well as the Secretary of State's division, the staff determined that the July-August calendar, with the primary being held in July and if necessary, and the general election being held in August, was the most feasible option, and it would allow these communities to utilize schools as their polling locations, since they would be closed for summer vacation. Additionally, it also did provide that extended time frame for a declaration period to be publicized sufficiently by the local boards. Now, if the board doesn't have any questions regarding the draft calendar, the staff requests that the calendar be approved for this Senate District 4 special elections to be held on August 5th, 2025, with the primary to be held on July 8th, if necessary. And I'm happy to answer any questions from the board.
Thanks, Director. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Just clarifying, is the candidate disaffiliation is March 1st? Is that supposed to be May 1st, or is that, it's too far past for anyone to disaffiliate?
It is too far. Generally, in special elections, the disaffiliation date will have been passed, since it is 90 days
Okay,
for disaffiliation, and that's in the statute.
thank you.
I'll move to accept the calendar.
Second.
Motion to accept and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. Agenda item number 4, the board may discuss and vote to approve the calendar for Coventry Town Council Special Election District 3 and 4. Okay. We're passing on agenda item number 4. Did you want to just say, just a sentence about why?
There's currently some activity in Coventry, and we wanted to allow that to play out by the end of this week in order to set the calendars
Okay.
for the town. It might be additional districts.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 5, the board may discuss and vote to approve the calendar for Central Falls City Council special election and special referendum, Ward 4.
Honorable members of the board, effective March 7th, Central Falls City Council member Luz Velez Garcia resigned from her city council seat for personal reasons. The Central Falls City Charter requires that a special election be held to complete the remaining portion of the vacant term. The city also reached out to us and expressed interest in conducting a citywide special referendum to amend the city charter at the same time as the special election to fill this vacant council seat. So the staff worked with the Central Falls Board of Canvassers to determine the best timeframe in which to hold both the special election and the special referendum simultaneously as quickly as feasible while complying with the different deadlines required for both different types of elections. Holding the election on July 8th established the candidate declaration period as April 25th and 28th. A primary will not be necessary as there is only one candidate who has declared their candidacy. If the board does not have any questions regarding the draft calendars for these elections, the staff requests that they be approved for the Central Falls City Council Ward 4 special election and the citywide special referendum to be held on July 8th, 2025.
Can I ask a clarifying question? So my question is, so we're only just now voting on the election calendar. So how is it that the declaration for candidacy sort of already passed? Like, how is this announced, I guess, in the city? Just sort of, because yes, I'm just sort of curious about how was this announced in the city? You said that there's only one candidate, so there's no primary. So does that mean that maybe there was not enough information? I'm just curious, how does that look like on the ground?
Well, preferably in general, the declaration period would be before the calendar is set. We're setting the date for the election. There was no meeting of the board. This was after the normal board meeting. And this has been something that the city has been working with us since March 7th with the staff, but nothing was set in stone. And they also introduced the variation of the referendum, which took some time to hash out with this charter referendum. So to work with them in order to save some costs, in order to conduct both of them at the same time, we held off essentially until this meeting and to get it approved.
No, that makes sense. So I guess I'm just making also the assumption that just because we're seeing it for the first time doesn't mean that the city has, it's obvious, they've talked about it, assuming there's some type of announcements that go out, the fact this is vacant, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
The commissioner's point's well taken, though. If I don't know how you can have a declaration period until your election is approved. I don't understand that. We just went through that with the one before this, where we went beyond 90 days because we needed to get the election in order. I don't know how the city can set a schedule for declaring candidacies when we haven't approved the election. I mean, I just think the commissioner's point is extremely well taken on this.
Yeah.
And the Central
Go ahead.
Falls Board of Canvassers is here in case you have any questions, but I know that their council and their local board did vote on this previously. It was just the referendum that did hold up the calendars from being finalized. So essentially, that was sort of like the wrinkle in the whole thing that did throw it off.
And when was the declaration period? Can you go back? I can't see.
It was from the 25th
Of,
to the 28th of April.
okay. Yeah, I guess, yeah.
It's a tight window, too.
Very well taken. It's a tight window, and I would be concerned if there was anyone that, being their one candidate, I mean, was there anyone that had tried that
Since
would have
March 7th, yeah.
wanted to declare but wasn't able to because of the timing.
I believe if Alberto, you want to answer to that? You had several weeks, correct, of publicity for this?
Yeah, I just want to, I mean, we're not, I just want to make sure.
We had actually gone out and put it out, the word out there to everyone.
Okay.
And there really wasn't any interest in anyone else running. And it was just one individual that came up. And we were actually afraid that no one actually run.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes,
So,
of
so how
course.
was the declaration period was it advertised in some way? How was it publicized?
It was publicized on our website. The mayor also made some mention of it on her website and her page. So it was out there.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the board? And I do agree with the board that ideally, it should happen, the calendar should be set before the declaration period, but in this circumstance, it was a very tight window to get the calendar, both calendars set. So that did lead to some complexity to it.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
One opposed. Abstentions? The ayes have it. Agenda item number 6, the board may discuss and vote to approve the polling locations for the primary and general election for Senate District 4.
Members of the board. On April 28th, the Providence Board of Canvassers met to discuss and vote on the selection of polling places for the upcoming special election in Senate District 4. The board voted unanimously to open one of their 3 polling locations in Senate District 4, which would combine the precinct 2848, the E-Cubed Academy, and precinct 2850, Mount Pleasant High School, into one location at precinct 2849, Vesey Street School, located at 211 Vesey Street, which also serves Senate District 4. Early voting will be conducted at the Providence City Hall. Likewise, on May 5th, the North Providence Board of Canvassers met to vote on their selection of polling places for the special election. The local board voted unanimously to request the opening of 3 of the 9 polling places in Senate District 4. The locations are precinct 2402, Ritchie School, located at 151 Intervale Avenue, precinct 2404, James McGuire School at 55 Central Avenue, and precinct 2412, Wheelan School at 1440 Mineral Spring Avenue. Early voting will be conducted at the North Providence Town Hall. So for some historical reference, considering the last 3 Senate special elections conducted, in the fall of 2023, for comparison, we held a special election for Senate District 1 in Providence, which was held in conjunction, as you remember, with the CD1 special election. The overall primary turnout was 8.78%, with the general election turnout being 6.57%. In the fall of 2021, we held a special election in Senate District 3 on the east side of Providence, and the turnout in the primary was 18.15% for the primary and 12.8% in the general election. And then finally, in the winter of 2018, we conducted a special election for the Senate District 8 seat in Pawtucket. The primary turnout was 7.27%, and the general election turnout was 6.11%. The largest precinct here before you today in North Providence, the Wheelan School, would have 7,823 voters assigned to it as part of this combination request. Considering that about 40% of voters will vote either early or request a mail ballot, we expect approximately 470 voters to visit the location, the precinct on primary or election day, assuming a 10% turnout. This is well within the capacity of the location, which typically handles about 1,600 voters during a statewide election. As is typical, we will ask the local boards to place a sign at any polling location which will be closed that will direct voters to their polling place, which will be in operation on that primary or election day. Based on the turnout being typically low for these types of special elections and the selected polls being centrally located and convenient for voters to reach, the staff does agree with these selections and asks that you approve them. The Providence Board of Canvassers and the North Providence Board of Canvassers do have staff here to answer any questions that the board may have about the polling place elections. And I'm happy to answer any questions as well.
Okay.
Questions?
I actually do. I have
Yes.
a question as to the selection of VZ Street School to service the Mount Pleasant polling place, because it's a bit of a distance away.
Mhm. Right, it's got to turn green.
Can you repeat the schools again? What locations, can you repeat the locations you mentioned?
Well, the Mount Pleasant polling place is being
Here we go.
joined with E Cubed, and
Got
they're
it.
both going to VZ Street. E Cubed is just down the street
Gotcha.
from VZ Street. In fact, E Cubed is on the corner of Branch and VZ.
Yep.
But Mount Pleasant is
Is a
quite a
whole other-
distance away.
So, Vice Chair, just to address that, the original plan was to go with VZ and Mount Pleasant. Mount Pleasant, unfortunately, is being, some construction's being done and is not available.
Okay, I didn't realize.
So I did reach out also to try to keep them more central to the Providence Water Supply Board, who we've used in the past. Unfortunately, there's a police academy going on there, and they're doing some roof work. So, I mean, the voters are probably going to have to drive maybe another mile or to get to VZ Street School. We are going to send out a notice. As a matter of fact, I'm planning to send it out by the end of the month. The polling location change,
Okay.
giving people the option to do mail ballots, and so on. But yeah, it was just, everything kind of came together.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just, I'm assuming, so early voting is gonna happen at Providence and North Providence City Hall,
Yes.
right? Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
I love that it's 2 cities.
I know. And if there are no other questions, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the polling places as described.
Second.
Motion moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. Agenda item number 7, the board may discuss and vote to approve the polling locations for the primary and general election for Coventry Town Council and special election District 3 and 4. And I'm assuming
Yes,
the
pass-
same goes to
passing.
this, we're passing. Okay. Agenda item number 8, the board may discuss and vote to approve the polling locations for the primary and general election for the Central Falls City Council special election and special referendum, Ward 4.
Members of the board, on April 29th, the Central Falls Board of Canvassers met to discuss and vote on their selection of polling places for the upcoming city council special election and citywide special referendum to be held on July 8th. For the city council Ward 4 special election, the board did vote unanimously to open one polling place, the only polling place located in that ward, which is precinct 0403, Wilford Manor, side A, which is located at 466 Hunt Street. For the citywide special referendum, the city voted unanimously to open 4 of their 8 polling locations. The locations are precinct 0401, Ferran Manor, located at 30 Washington Street, precinct 0405, which is the Knights of Columbus, located at 20 Claremont Street, precinct 0406, which is Wilford Manor side B, at 466 Hunt Street. Note that precinct 0403 side A is also located at Wilford Manor and will have both the city council contest and the charter referendum question on the ballot for their voters. Early voting will be conducted at Central Falls City Hall. Now, as for some historical reference, considering the last 3 special elections or special referendums which have been held in Central Falls previously, the last one was obviously the CD1 special election, which was held in the fall of 2023. The primary turnout for that CD1 election was 7.75%. and the election turnout was 6.86%. In the fall of 2021, the city did hold a special election for city council and a special referendum simultaneously, similar to this upcoming election. There was no primary, and the election turnout was 3.78% in that election. And then finally, we had to go all the way back to the winter of 2015, when the city held a special election for city council, and the turnout in that primary was 12.16%. For the primary, and then 7.75% for the general election. The largest precinct that they're going to open is Foran Manor, which would have 3,399 voters assigned to it as part of this combination. Now, if we consider that about 40%, as mentioned previously, will vote by mail or vote early, we expect approximately 204 voters to visit this location, Foran Manor, on Election Day, assuming a 10% turnout for the election. This is well within the capacity of that location, which during a statewide general election will typically handle upwards of 1,200 voters at the polls on Election Day. Again, we will request that the Central Falls Board of Canvassers place a sign or any signage that's clearly visible at any location that will be closed. So any of those 4 locations that will be closed, they'll post a sign directing voters to their correct location operating that day. And again, based on that historical turnout within the city, and the polls being centrally located and convenient for voters to reach, the staff agrees with these selections and does ask that you approve them. We also have representatives here from the Central Falls Board of Canvassers if you have any questions about the selection of the polls for this special election and special referendum.
Thank you. Any questions?
A quick question.
Of course.
Not sure who to direct this to, maybe to the Board of Canvassers, but being that there are 2 polling places at Wilfred Manor A and B, is there special signage or something to just make sure? Because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of confusion, some voters going in the wrong for both elections, some going for the special election. What's the plan for that?
I'll let Alberto answer that, but I will say that for dual locations, our standard operation by default is to include a required greeter, so that if someone comes in, someone can say to them, sorry. So that someone can direct them to side A, side B, because even though it'll only be a few hundred people, we don't want a few hundred confused people.
Okay.
Got to get your steps in, Alberta. Anything else? Do we have a motion?
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
I'm going to vote no because I voted no on the election process. I don't think that the notice is proper, so I'm going to vote no.
Okay. 1 no. Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Agenda item number 9, the board may discuss and vote upon the recommendation from the Legislative Committee on the attached campaign finance and election legislation submitted by other persons and entities to the General Assembly during the current legislative term. Madam Chair?
Yes, thank you. So we met today about 3 specific bills. So the first one I'll direct your attention to is 5872A. So what this is, it's a sub-A. So it's an amendment to the original piece of legislation, which the board voted to support on April 8th. So what this, the amendment, and then again, I welcome Miguel to answer any questions that or comments anyone else may have, but this adds an exemption. So this, it's about fraudulent synthetic media and election communications. So this actually adds an exemption to streaming services when it comes to this. I remember in one of the hearings, this was a concern, right? If there's a like a Netflix show that has something like this, is that something that is violating this bill? So, but I'm happy to have Miguel answer or add anything more.
That was the
context.
only change from the original. So the sub-A included those two exemptions.
Yep, and I just wanted to add also really quickly, so this is an amendment to the House version. The Secretary of State did mention that we should expect an amendment for the Senate version as well. And the subcommittee voted to approve it.
Right, I forget, are we taking these one at a time?
I would, because
Usually,
it's
yeah.
3 and. Yeah.
Typically, they are, Madam Chair.
Yes. Any questions for the chairwoman or director on this piece, on this sub-A? Okay. Hearing none, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second,
Move to approve,
to support,
yes.
or to approve the subcommittee, I guess.
Yeah.
Thank you, yes.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, abstentions? The ayes have it.
The next bill is 6234 by Representative Kazarian. This bill came in front of us last year as well. This year has a few changes. Rick walked us through some of it. Again, happy to have him answer any other questions. So it amends various sections of the law relating to campaign contributions and expenditures, including prohibitions on self-dealing with committee funds, as well as donations made in fictitious names. And in the package, you'll actually see a letter of support from Common Cause. So happy to have either Rick or John share why they are recommending support, and the subcommittee voted to support the piece of legislation.
I'm happy if Rick and John, do you have anything further you want to add besides your written testimony? You good? Yeah, okay. And does anyone have any questions for Rick or John?
I do. I think my first question is for Rick. I'm trying to find the subsection, but it's page, it looks like 11. Pages are a little out of order here, so maybe section B of 172511B. Rick, it says at the last sentence that's added is any committee that reports accounts payable cannot be dissolved until such accounts are fully paid, which makes sense. Would that apply if we came to a settlement with it? Let's say they had fines and the only thing outstanding was the fines to the Board of Elections. Is that?
No, the accounts payable would be if the campaign owed a vendor for either goods or services provided to the
Okay.
campaign. So
All right.
any fines or fees assessed by the board would be separate.
Because my concern would be if it did stay open, then they could potentially have to do more reports and yeah. And then I think that's it, actually. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Anyone else? And you said the subcommittee did vote to support.
To support,
I thought so, yeah. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to support the subcommittee's recommendation.
Second.
Moved and seconded to support. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it.
And the last one is Bill 6251 by Representative Brian. The act redefines political party and distinguishes between major parties and minor parties. I think it's an attempt we've had similar pieces of legislation actually come in front of us. That's how it sort of want to make it easier to have expansion to other parties. The subcommittee voted to have no position on this bill.
Any discussion, questions? Do you mind just saying a little bit more about the decision to take no position, or was
Yeah.
there discussion
Yeah,
around that?
happy to. Yeah, so Commissioner DeSimone can speak more about it, but I think one of the things that we've done, especially when it comes to something like this seems a lot more policy that, yes, eventually will come to us, but there's not as much action to it, that the Board of Elections directly would have to take at the moment. So we're not opposing, we just took no position to it at the moment.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to support the subcommittee's recommendation.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. Agenda item number 10, the board may discuss and vote to approve the attached compensation policy for the Board of Elections. And I know the director has asked to provide some opening remarks, and Commissioner Jack Boney, if you wish to do so as well. Happy to hear from both of you.
Madam Chair and honorable members of the board. As you all are all well aware, elections are an extremely deadline-driven event governed by both federal and state laws. The successful conduct of any election depends entirely on each deadline being met in order for future deadlines to be set and complied with in a timely manner. The law allows no variance or exception for these deadlines in most cases. Our elected officials, the board, and most importantly, the electorate in our state expect all aspects of that process to be conducted seamlessly within the framework set out in the law and by board regulations. There is no alternative. The election must get done. The lion's share of this work falls upon your staff here as follows. It means that voters expect all 453 polling locations to be inspected individually for handicap accessibility. And they, under the law, expect all those polling places to be selected under the required 50 days before any election. They expect all 1,100 voting machines and 1,600 electronic poll books will be rigorously maintained and tested for accuracy and operational and in place for the early voting period, 20 days before Election Day, and at the polls on Election Day. They expect the hundreds of election-related forms to be proofed, packaged, and ready to go when early voting commences or when the polls open on Election Day. When they arrive at the early voting site or the polling place, there is an expectation that the over 5,000 poll workers trained by our staff will have the knowledge and understanding of the hundreds of election laws and procedures that are necessary to run the election fairly and according to the law, as well as operate complex equipment such as DS200 tabulators, express vote machines, and poll pads, which they usually only interact with every 2 years as poll workers in most cases. The public also expects their mail ballots to be retrieved by the board staff in a timely fashion from any of our 41 drop boxes located across the state. Whether their mail ballot arrives via a drop box or the U.S. Postal Service, the voter expects to be able to determine very quickly and easily on our website or calling if their ballot was received, accepted, and or counted. Election observers expect every single signature on every single mail ballot to be scrutinized for validity through a complex process. And if a voter's ballot is disqualified because a voter's signature does not match, voters expect to be notified of such and to be able to cure it by the deadline so that it may be returned and counted by the BOE. In over 100 nursing home facilities across our state, residents expect one of our 16 bipartisan peers of election officials to hand deliver their ballot to them, assist them with marking their ballots if necessary, and return those ballots securely to our facility for tabulation. And in many cases, you're talking about almost 2,000 ballots handled in this way in a general statewide election. During Election Day, as you know, it's a state holiday in which nearly all other state employees are not working. The board staff is working, and they begin at 5 a.m. to support the opening of the polls across the state. This includes manning our call center, providing technical support and all other types of guidance to the poll workers and the Board of Canvassers staff, as well as coordinating the delivery of any replacement equipment to any locations prior to the 7 a.m. opening time so that no disruptions occur. The work of supporting elections usually continues into the early hours of the next day. As the polls close at 8 p.m., results suddenly flood in, but are reduced to a trickle as some storage drives must be driven to the Board of Elections manually for whatever technical reason. And the staff coordinates all of this with our over 130 election technicians who they train and are in the field throughout Election Day. Now, after Election Day, the work is far from done. The drop boxes still need to have all of their ballots collected. Election returns all need to be accepted from our local boards in our warehouse, where everything must be meticulously sorted, logged, signed off by the local boards. while thousands of pieces of equipment are simultaneously being returned by our vendor in our warehouse for our voting equipment, which must be processed in inventory to ensure that all the equipment has been returned. For over a week after any election day, the staff continues to canvass votes from Dropbox ballots, provisional ballots, manual count ballots, cured mail ballots, and military and overseas ballots, while continuously updating those results online until all results are posted in coordination with our election web reporting team. Once all the votes are counted, the staff then moves on to preparing for protests and recounts, all of which must be conducted within an extremely tight time frame under immense scrutiny. While recounts are being conducted, the staff is simultaneously preparing for the risk limiting audit, which are very detailed and complex and must be by law successfully completed prior to this board certifying the results. And if you just indulge me for a moment, because I'm sort of like the old man walking around here, I just want to give some historical perspective on how I've seen the administration of elections change and grow over the past 2 decades. The board has seen a tremendous increase in its responsibilities for conducting election. Here are a few of the changes I have personally been around to see. When I first joined the board, there were no auto marks or express votes. Those arrived in 2004. There was no provisional voting. That arrived in 2006. There were no drop boxes. That arrived in 2020. There was no voter ID. That arrived in 2012. There were no poll pads. Those arrived in 2016. There were fewer tabulators to test, as we only sent one voting machine to each polling location. Now we send 2 to 3 to each to many locations, which requires much more testing and maintenance, and the process of inventorying them. There was no early voting. That arrived in 2020. The staff now processes more mail ballots during a routine gubernatorial statewide election than we ever did in the past for any election previously until 2018. So in a routine election, we process as many ballots as we ever did for any election prior to 2020. And until 2018, the staff was not required to allow a voter to send was not required to allow a voter to send in a deficiency notice to cure their ballot. That began with the elections of 2020. Over the years, the staff has also taken on various responsibilities that once more intricately involved board members. Up until 2012, 4 board members signed each voting tape on every tabulator in our warehouse after LNA testing, a process that took sometimes days for each member to complete. The staff is now responsible for this, although we do present the results to the board for certification as required. Up until 2016, the board members compared the voter signatures on all mail ballots to the voter's ballot application manually by hand. This includes over 42,000 ballots, which board members certified in the 2016 presidential election. This process took weeks, sometimes months, and is now the responsibility of the staff, thankfully with the equipment that we've incorporated. Up until 2020, the board was also required to be present during the conduct of all recounts, to review any reviewed ballots for overvotes or voter intent, a process for recounts that can typically take about 2 to 3 business days, depending on how many recounts we have scheduled. This process is now handled by the staff, and now we're able to bring any contested ballots to present them to you at the board meeting to certify the recount results. Over all these years, despite these additional mandates under the law and changes to the complexity of conducting elections, the size of the elections division at the Board of Elections has remained the same, consisting of 6 staff members, which in 2024 consisted of only 5 due to attrition. This has led to the increase in seasonal staff workers, the supervision of an increased number of seasonal staff who are paid overtime if they work more than 35 hours during the week. For decades, compensation time has been a valuable tool for getting higher output from a smaller staff with unique and highly specialized responsibilities. During the non-election years, the size of the staff is adequate for the conduct of special elections, of which we have many, development of new programs, and our many and growing outreach, community outreach efforts. However, during election cycles, it is critical for each staff member to increase their productivity and commitment in an intense and focused period of time as early as the period when nomination papers start to be filed, as we're well aware, and through the conduct of the election until the board certifies the results. Compensation time is that valuable tool that can be used, that is used to incentivize the staff to push through these critical times when they are not only responsible for managing and supervising dozens of seasonal staff to accomplish these duties during the normal business hours, but are also responsible for working into the evening, training, preparing our equipment and supplies, or certifying and tabulating mail ballots and the process that entails. In conclusion, when faced with numerous critical deadlines within a limited window of time, limited staff size, and the expectation from the board and the public that the election be administered lawfully and on schedule, there is no alternative but to get the work done. With great respect for any decision made by this board, my goal as the executive director is to conduct the election successfully. And I will do that regardless of my attempt will be to do that regardless of the tools provided to me. But all I do ask is that you do provide me with the tools that I believe are necessary to achieve that goal within appropriate guardrails to be placed in place by this board. And as a reminder that this policy can be revisited at any time by the board in the future if it feels there is a need to do so. And I have on the next screen, I do have just a basic chart of some of the recommendations based on the subcommittee meeting. And essentially, they do align for the most part. However, in my assessment and my recommendation is that the number of hours per hours worked remains as the unwritten policy has been for the 1.5 per 1 hour worked over 35 hours. We do work a 40-hour work week as state employees. However, there is a 1 hour lunch, so it's only 35 hours that are paid. The current draft includes a 1 per 1 hour worked over between 35 and 45 hours. Secretary of State's compensation policy is 1.5 per 1 hour work, similar to the previous unwritten policy here. Comp time over 45 hours worked is, my recommendation would be 1.5 per 1 hour worked, as is currently done. And the current draft is 1.5 hour per 1 hour worked over the 45 hours. So that matches up. And the Secretary of State likewise is 1.5 per hour to 1 hour worked over the 45 hours. The additional time allowed by the executive director, my recommendation is 50. The current compensation draft is 50 as well. There is nothing comparable in the Secretary of State's policy, as there is no limit. As you can see on the max comp accrual time above there, my recommendation is 375 hours based on my analysis of how much comp time has been accrued over the last, since 2018, even including the special elections and CD1 in 2023 and the special statewide referendum in 2021. The current draft has a recommendation for 300 hours. There is no maximum accrual for the Secretary of State. And then the last two there is the discharge requirement timeframe. My recommendation is the 18 months. The current draft does have the 18 months recommendation. There is no hard deadline based on our conversations with the Secretary of State's office. Generally, it's at the end of the next calendar year, but that can be extended by the staff there as well. And then, again, the last one is the extension allowed by the executive director. I recommend the 6-month extension. The current draft contains the same 6-month extension, with anything beyond that having to be required by the board. And there is nothing comparable in the Secretary of State's policy to go over. And if you, just in some numbers here, the employee comp hours accrual average per election, I went back to 2018. Again, this is only on the elections staff side, and it can vary. If you notice, there are spikes in 2022 and 2024, just because we had special elections, statewide special elections occur. And when you have that happen, it becomes very difficult for the staff to discharge time when they know they have to be on site working to get the election done. Because whenever you conduct a special election, you have all the same requirements of a statewide election, whenever you have a statewide special election. So I'm not generally going to be approving them to take time off if I need someone to tabulate mail ballots or supervise people to go out to nursing homes. So I will be very restrictive in approving any time off if we are running for conducting a special election. But my target going forward would be that for 2028 would be the target to be around that 80 to 100 hours maximum by more efficiently using our resources and our staffing to prevent comp time from accruing like it has in past years. So that's an active goal of mine to more efficiently manage the staff so that their comp time does not accrue, as has happened in the past. But the current policy does allow me to extend the discharge period by 6 months, which as Commissioner DeSimone mentioned in the subcommittee meeting, would allow me to extend it for 6 months in the event that there's an unexpected special election and folks couldn't discharge. The average comp by year, again, it's going to be higher this year just because of the 2023 CD1 and the nomination paper issues that we encountered in 2023. But my recommendation for the 375 was simply because that is where the target is. Would be the max I would envision anyone ever accruing. They would still have to discharge that within the 18 months or they would lose it. And again, the 375 max is there. I will say that 95% of the employees have under between 300 and 375, are under 300, I would say. We only have 2 employees who are, or 1 employee really, he's over 300. And that individual would have to discharge that time within the given time frame, or be, as it's sunsetted into this policy, would have to use it or they would lose it based on the new policy being in place. And I know that it was mentioned before about the number of weeks. 375 hours is about 10 and a half weeks of time, but that's not something that someone's not coming up to me and saying, I want to take 10 and a half weeks off. It's usually going to happen where they're going to take a day or 2 here. Maybe it might be medical related because they don't have enough sick time. Their state employees are allowed to accrue up to 875 hours of sick time. But newer employees don't have anything. They have a very limited amount of sick time, so they might be taking maternity leave, paternity leave based off of that comp time. But 375 hours, that's 10 and a half weeks, but they would have 78 weeks to discharge that. That's 18 months. So 78 weeks to discharge 10 and a half weeks. If I had to extend it to 24 months, which is in the current proposal, both my recommendation and the subcommittee's recommendation, that's 104 weeks. So they would have 104 weeks to discharge 10 and a half weeks of time, which clearly is not all going to be taken all at once. It's not something that I would be allowing someone to take a month off or 2 weeks off and then having to hire someone to replace them or having to hire someone to fulfill their duties. This would be something that is only approved during staggered times, during the off year, between all of our off-year projects, which we are regularly conducting along with special elections, but also as many of the public don't know, we also support all the non-Title 17 elections. So all of the Title 17 special financial town meetings and all-day referendums that occur throughout the state between January and June of every year, including election years and off years. With that being said, I'm happy to answer any questions from the board on the proposed policy and my recommendations.
Thank you, Miguel. Just before I turn it over to others for questions, and certainly anyone from the subcommittee who wants to speak to where you landed at the subcommittee meeting, just want to say on behalf of myself, though I venture I can speak for the entire board when I say the development of a comp time policy has nothing to do with any lack of belief in how hard the staff works, in the comprehensive nature and depth of the process. I firmly believe that we all greatly value the work and understand the sense of urgency and what we all, what you all need to deliver for the public and for this board. I think if we didn't believe that, we would probably not be serving on this board. So I just think it's important to say, I appreciate this discussion and, being able to hear from all perspectives. And so just, want to make sure there's no suggestion or no indication or belief of anyone that anyone on this board, does not wholeheartedly appreciate and support the work of the staff, and hope we can, get to a good place that both, allows for that process to happen and, for really the staff to be protected for future years, that anyone would, wish to come in the absence of a policy and just wipe out what people, well deserve. So just wanted to make that point, but thank you, Miguel, for your comprehensive summary and for this data. I think it's really helpful. And I'm happy to open it up. I'm sure board members definitely have comments and questions, and Commissioner.
Oh, no, okay. I thought, I just have a question. Do you mind going back to the other slide, one before this? One more, where you had your, yes, okay, perfect. Because this is employee comp accruals average per election. Okay, yeah, sorry. So, because this slide and the last one, I was looking at the average and the numbers on the hours on the side just looked a little different. But it makes sense now. So my question is, to your 2028 goal of, is that I have, my goal is to keep it to this target for 2028 by using our resources better. So great, that's awesome. I'm very excited. What do those look like? So what does that look like? 'Cause somehow 2028 will be like tomorrow.
Well, we have we have a staff that's very dedicated and committed to doing their job and doing it right and making the agency the public perception of the agency to be positive. And I think a lot of us, have to work good on delegation skills, and we can't do everything.
Yeah.
There are only so many hours in the day, and the staff needs to recognize that, even though they might have their special expertise, they can't do it all. So we bring in seasonal staff to assist them, to delegate and to train seasonal staff on to do some things. But I think part of the issue over the years is that folks have been in a niche where they don't want to let go of what they're doing until someone else, and that entails working more hours, even coming in on a Saturday. So I think that part of that structure is going to be to spread duties out, so folks don't feel like they have to work that many hours. For example, one common thing that we have is we have vendors. We have 3 vendors that deliver voting equipment over a 2-week period. Now, they like to start early, or either they start early to load up their equipment, or they like to load up their equipment late in the evening for the day before their deliveries. We require that they keep their trucks here on site. They can't take them or store election equipment off of our premises. However, they might want to stay later for loading trucks, or they might want to come in at 6 a.m. when the staff starts at 8. So we have to have a staff member here for that either early arrival or that late load. And if that happens, It really is just the management of making sure that it's not the same person that's here at 6 a.m. That's going to be here
the whole
until
time.
6 p.m.
Yep.
It can be someone that just comes in early, works maybe a little bit of a longer day,
Mhm.
but not as long of a day
Mhm.
to accrue an additional amount of time. And that's just one example of how we want to spread the load, and especially when we have this additional staff member come on, where we don't feel that we will need to accrue that much calm time going forward.
No, that's really helpful, because it sounds, so, and correct me if I'm wrong, so it sounds like in the next couple of years, you want to do sort of an audit of, and just think about how managers are really managing their, like, delegation. Delegating as a manager is really hard, so I think it sounds like there might be some training support that some managers may need into understanding how to delegate, or even audit what should they be doing or changing, right?
Correct. And
Great.
we're also investing in some automation with the inventory and asset management. We're investing in some tools to make that much easier and much less labor intensive. So when this machine rolls off the trucks from the polling places, it's going to be immediately electronically tagged as being here. Not something that's going to have to be manually scanned. That's something that takes a lot less time. And as those improvements in automation occur, we expect the manual labor, the time intensive stuff to take place. However, there are some things that we just can't get away from. I mean, the staff is the most knowledgeable staff on elections here in the state, and we would want them out there training poll workers. But we also need them to do their jobs during the day. So when we're asking them to do training at 6 or 7 o'clock at night at auditoriums, community centers all across the state, our alternative to that is hiring seasonal folks or folks who aren't as knowledgeable and having them go out there and do the training, which we've had some mixed success and not success with in the past. So preferably, we would have the most knowledgeable people out there in the evening providing the answers to the poll workers. But that does entail them working large days, generally long days, Monday through Thursday. Again, that is something that we are investing in remote learning to some extent, because there's only so far you can go with that. But we think with some of these improvements that we're going to be making over the next couple of years, we think some of those automations and technology will help reduce the workload as far as the number of hours. But we do expect to have to work long hours because, as I said, when things have to get done, they have to get done. The election must go on.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that.
Overtime for the state, for seasonal workers, for example, it's 35 hours. After 35 hours.
But doesn't the labor board say it kicks in at 40 hours?
No, the state position, the way the state classifies those positions, those general employees, we pay them time and a half after 35 hours. They get double time if they work on a state holiday.
Well, I guess, well, first of all, I didn't realize that as part of the committee. My understanding of, in all the labor work I've ever done was that overtime kicks in at 40 hours. I would maybe ask the other commissioners if a modification, simply changing paragraph B to 40 hours as opposed to 35 hours, would suffice as addressing that issue. That would basically use the 40-hour work week as the key for an hour and a half in comp time. I don't know if that's something the other committee members would consider. I think that the point of our staff members work hard. I think they do. They work extremely hard. They're asked to do a lot during elections. I think that what the committee tried to do is come to some reasonable draft of a policy. And I agree with Commissioner Giacavone that there is no policy now. I think the policy now is that there is no policy. And I understand, I'm not criticizing this executive director or any of the past directors or any of the board members, but there simply isn't a policy. When we first looked to find a policy, I think Commissioner Giacavone went to the administration and saw a policy that said maximum of 70 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And basically no time whatsoever earned before 45 hours. And that's what the state guideline was for us. And certainly that seemed unreasonable, at least it did to me. So I think what we just tried to do is try to craft something that's fair to everybody. I mean, if the members of the committee want to look at this policy and say, well, okay, we don't like the 45 hours, my suggestion would be to cut off to 40. Just simply change that paragraph from 45 hours to 40 hours, and it would, I believe, remedy any of the unfairness. But again, that's just my belief or my suggestion. But I certainly seconded it for purposes of discussion and purposes of amendment. I do think that we need to do something before the next election process. If the direction from the board is, hey, go back and start over again, then we go back and start over again. But, you know, this was a good faith effort to try to help the staff by protecting them, also help the executive director by giving him some leeway. I mean, you'll also see that, and I worked at the Secretary of State's office many years ago, and the policy back then was not even in their handbook, and it was by December of the following year, all the time is gone. So, you know, that's something that we didn't want to do from our end, make it hard and fast. We wanted to give the director that leeway. There are elections in the off years. So we did try to address those concerns. And the only other issue I have with what's up on the current draft, I do think the current draft is 350, because I think that's in any year where there's an election, it's 350. So that's the only correction, if anything, I would make on that screenshot.
So just to summarize before I have a discussion point or a comment, you are suggesting or asking if the motion on the floor to be amended to 40 hours instead of 45, and the current comp dropped of 300 max time to 350? Is that?
I mean, I
What are
think
you
it
saying?
says 350 now.
Oh, it does.
At least
I
that's
saw
my reading.
300
It says
somewhere.
350 for special elections only. And then at the top, in the same one, in that one, it says the compensatory time will maintain any time between 300 for hours for a
No,
35 period week.
I think what it says is, provided that in any year in which a statewide special election is held, that it adds 350. Yeah, I mean, I think
If
that
I
was
may, I think our discussion was, we
statewide.
landed on 300.
Mm-hmm.
There was a concern that if in the next year there happened to be a special election like CD1,
Mhm.
that it would make it difficult to actually discharge all of that time. And so the way to alleviate that was we would temporarily extend the cap. That way, no one would say, oh, I have 300, I'm not quite there yet. So if they had to work extra hours, then we would allow a temporary extension of the cap. So it's not 350 every year.
It's
And
just
if
a
there's no special
elections,
election,
yeah,
it would stay at 300.
that makes sense.
And Ray can correct me if I'm wrong, but that was our intention.
That's correct. Yep.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, you were not done. I interrupted you.
No,
Oh.
I just think from my purpose, at least, in sitting on the committee, was I had a concern with numbers of hours being carried beyond the election, beyond the following election year. And I understand it's 11 weeks, but I do think that following election year, or in this case, 18 months plus an additional 6 months,
Yeah,
gives
that's more.
everyone a chance to
Mhm.
use those hours, frankly. I was originally of the opinion that it should be 12 months. Because that off year is when we need those hours discharged. I'm a little averse to somebody coming into an election year already holding 300 hours, and then we're gonna ask them, hey, we need you to work another 200 hours. I think that's unfair to the staff, frankly. So that's why I had suggested the 12 hours, 12 months. I'm fine with the 18 months, and also giving the director that leeway. I think we have not tried to hamstring the director, and if that's the impression, it's the incorrect impression. But again, at least for myself, I try to be fair to every side in this. And I don't know if the other board members would consider, because it seems like the concern is that 35 hours landmark. And I would suggest a 40-hour mark, simply because my understanding of the way labor works is that the 41st hour is time and a half. So again, if the board tells us, hey, go back and redo it, go back and we want to have it all over again, we want there to be an unlimited amount, well, that's up to the board, obviously, and the majority of the board. like I said, I second for the purposes of discussion. And for purposes of, having a vote and adopting some type of policy. But again, anyone can amend any way they choose.
So that, yeah, that was helpful. That was my clarification. So you're saying from 35 to 40, it's just one to one. And then at hour 41, it's the hour and a half.
Correct.
Okay,
That
perfect.
would,
Thank you.
again, I don't know, that's just a
That's yeah.
suggestion I make that if the other
Okay.
board members would.
Yeah. No, and I appreciate that. I think
I don't
I
know.
just wanted to echo the same thing. I appreciate this. And I, as someone who, I am a very big fan of having things in writing because we could have had, you're right, we could have had an executive director who said no one's getting comp time, and that like staff members should be very worried that there might be other policies that you don't have in writing that you're currently using. So, and to the second point, I completely agree. I think when correct me if I'm wrong, comp time, the only time this is quote unquote becomes money to people is when they leave. This is not at all.
No.
You
this
get
doesn't
paid this
carry.
out and it doesn't carry,
No, the comp time does not carry.
does not carry.
And
There's
that's
no,
the
there's
problem.
no fund, there's no payout ever.
No.
You don't get
Correct,
paid out
but
your
that's
comp
not-
time
but-
at all.
No,
Right.
sick and,
However,
and, right?
Oh, this is
However,
even great.
we did have a
It's wild.
situation in the past.
Yes,
Where
yes, I
comp
remember
time
this.
came into play.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
It was a large amount of
Yes.
comp time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And no, it wasn't used as a payout. It was used to extend time.
Got
service time.
it. Oh,
So-
okay. So this is even more concerning because so thank you for clarifying this
Which
because
is not allowed.
great. Thank you.
And in the policy.
Correct,
Neither
in the
DOA
policy,
or
it's
this
not
one.
allowed,
Okay,
correct.
perfect. This is
But-
really helpful.
But, and that's, again, one of the reasons where, at least for myself, and I'm not
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
speak for anyone else, needed
Yeah.
to have something
Yeah.
written down.
Oh, okay. This is really helpful and it's actually much more concerning that because I don't know which one of you mentioned like we should be concerned if the pay is the issue. I agree that that three commissioners are saying this doesn't feel fair. The fact that one, doesn't become money. This is only time off, which as someone who loves time off, I can understand that. I am a big fan of taking vacation, but it sounds so. Thank you. This is a helpful clarification because this is actually not. This is a benefit of someone's work, absolutely, for the incredible and hard work that they do. But this does not equate to people's money. This does not feed people. We are walking into a recession. This does not put money in people's pocket. So how is this? So if the goal of what we're doing is reducing the fact that, and I love that there's already a plan of how we're going to be better at like limiting these hours and also improving the management of the Board of Elections. So that is the job. Our job is to manage this board really well and help the executive director do that. So that, oh my God, it made me so upset. This doesn't it means people money. I agree. If the issue is the wages of our staff, then that is the thing that we also need to look at and make sure that this is in writing. I don't disagree of if it's the first 5 hours, it's a 1-to-1. You're doubling your hours. Again, as someone who I have never in my life earned a comp time, so I agree. I also don't know what that looks like, but it doesn't mean that people don't deserve it. It also means that it is, in a way, this is also holding our executive director accountable to ensure that he is running a good Board of Elections. Because to your point, are we making sure that he has the tools, not just the human tools, but the AI or whatever is necessary so that you can support the staff of the future and of today? So I think this is also holding our executive director accountable to making sure that we are running the best elections possible in the future.
Can I just clarify, based on Commissioner Betancourt's, it's not a 1-to-1, meaning that you work 1 hour over 35 hours, you're getting 2 hours. You're getting 1 hour, you give 1 hour, and you're getting 1 hour off. So it's not, it can be viewed that it's not a compensatory because you're just getting the same thing that you gave in. We are not getting anything over what you committed past your regular work hours. And the other point I wanted to make was, I'm a big believer in human behavior is changed when people know what structure they're working in. And we have the same caps. I mean, as state employees, we have the same caps, 875 for sick time, whatever it is, 300 hours for vacation time. The numbers are out there depending on how many years of service. Personal days is capped. Whatever time accrues is a cap. You can't just accrue it to infinity. But I think, working in the 1.5 to 1, with the cap, whatever that cap the board chooses is appropriate. The staff is going to know when I'm telling them, you need to delegate what you're doing to, or, you know, we need to work smarter. I like to use the term smarter, not harder. And if they know that they're not going to be getting comp time after whatever that cap you set, they know that working those extra hours, at some point, they're going to be working for nothing, essentially. And yes, I know that they understand that going into it, that if they reach the cap, they need to know it's the same thing if you have 876 hours of comp time. Sick time. Once you get to that cap, you're not accruing anything. It's just, you have to use it or lose it. So I think that with the combination of smarter management of the staff, along with these improvements, you're getting them to work those extra hours for that 1.5 to 1, but at the same time, they're going to be more receptive to delegating the work and spreading out their responsibilities, because now they know that there is no unlimited cap that they can to build into. And that's going to be set from the get-go from when this policy takes effect.
Thank you. And I want to underscore one important point, and we will get to a vote, and where that vote lands, whether we go back to the drawing board or not. This is one of 3 pieces of critical work that needs to get done, and my directive is to implore the comp committee, along with the executive director, to address the very serious nature of compensation in terms of, classification and our staff, to the point that Commissioner Bettenker made. We have to figure that out. And I'm not saying you haven't tried, we've talked about it. We have to make that a major charge of this board in terms of advocacy for the staff. And the other is that we need to increase the size of our staff to the extent that we have the ability to in the budget with, full time. So I just want to, I'm really, focused. This is important. And again, as evidenced by the thoughtful and spirited at times discussion, I think this is important, but it's one piece of, I think, what we have to do to improve the conditions for people that are doing, charged with preserving democracy and elections. So I can't overstate that enough. This is important. I'm not dismissing it, but we do have to put a policy in place. And we have to, get to work to ensure that we have the capacity and that the people who are a part of this time staff are being, compensated as according to the market and likewise positioned. So that's my ask, is after we come out of this, that is made a very high priority of this board and of our leadership team. Yes.
Go
I was
ahead.
going to say, they're great concepts, but it comes right down to when the rubber meets the road, we need staff to actually do the work.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and we need the director to know his staff will be available. So to say you're only going to have 1-for-1 up to a certain number of hours, 5 hours after over 35, I think it's really binding our director. If you're going to have comp time, it should be 1.5 hours after 35 hours of work, same as we do for seasonal workers. We pay them 1.5 times over 35 hours, and we can't pay our staff that because they're only limited by our budget, okay? So first of all, I think on Section B, as our Commissioner Simone has indicated, I oppose that Section B because I think the hours should be at 35 hours. Anything above 35 hours, 1.5 times for comp time. And the second was on the issue of the maximum time. And we had a heated debate on this thing over whether it should be 375, 350, 300. This draft shows 300. I believe 375 gives our director the leeway to do his job. We shouldn't bind him to that, okay? Even though you say, well, there's no policy in place for the last 30 years. This Board of Elections actually worked for 35, 40, 50 years with an unwritten policy. There was no fraud. No one claimed any problems. It worked perfectly. Now we come up detailed policy, okay? And this policy is going to, I think, create some problems. When we need our time, when we need the soldiers to be in the field, they're not going to be there, okay? So I think we have to give this a great deal of thought before we go down this road. That's all I have to say.
Commissioner Connors.
I do appreciate the fact that we need a policy and we need a framework in place. I disagree with one point Commissioner Scholl's made, that we haven't had any problems. Commissioner DeSimone mentioned a situation where there was a case an employee had a number of hours that had not been discharged, and it was going to extend his departure date. So there was some issues which should definitely be addressed, which I think a policy addresses. I still agree that the language should be 1.5 over 35 to keep it fair with, like I said, the Secretary of State's policy, with the union contract, and current practice. We don't have a problem with the 1.5 for 1 after 35, because that's our current practice. We did have a problem with the total number accrued. So I like the fact that we want to have a policy, that there's a framework in place, but I can only support one that says it's 1.5 hours over 35.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I would be, if there was an appetite, I'm not sure there is, I would be willing to amend my motion to modify as Commissioner DeSimone has suggested, but I still have trouble wrapping my head around the 1.5 because these are exempt positions. Time and a half applies to non-exempt positions. And I haven't read every state statute on the, or a state regulation regarding the employment practices of state employees, but I still think that would apply here. So this is, just to be clear, it's like salary versus an hourly employee. I've not heard the time and a half concept ever apply to a salaried employee. Granted, that's only my experience. So if someone could point me to a different application than that in state. And then, of course, state government, I do think that there are many state union contracts, so there's a lot of different classes of employees. And when I was a councilman in the city of Cranston, we had people, again, within the same department who were represented by different unions and thus had different contracts. So it is a bit of a challenge, but I think the important thing is that we put a framework around it so we can better manage it. But again, I just want to reiterate, we need to fix the other problem separate from that. We're talking about, I don't think it's fair to say we need to work these people harder and harder and give them comp time. No, we need to, if people are not being paid the appropriate amount of money, we need to advocate to get them paid the appropriate amount of money. And we haven't looked deeply enough at it for me to say that is or is not the case. We need to look at that. We need to address that.
Agreed.
Well, and to your point, perhaps we should make a presentation to the Department of Administration to increase the salary and the number of employees before we pass this type of policy. So we have an understanding of what the budget is for the Board of Elections and paying our employees. I think we're putting the cart before the horse.
I'm not sure why we would do that.
I don't,
totally
and
against that.
just to add to that, I think I understand what you're saying. And again, I've made clear that we need to prioritize that. Also, as the director pointed out, I think on the front end of this conversation, the policy can be amended at any time. So if we get to where we need to be or closer to it with the Department of Administration, then we make the changes then. That's my opinion.
And the Department of Administration might also tell us, because as Commissioner Simone said, they might say you're offering too much comp time, right? Like wasn't there like a document we found that it limited to some point? So they give 70. So I agree, they're going to DOA and in front of the legislature is important, but also be careful what you wish for when you go in front of them.
So are you saying, Commissioner Jackboni, you'd be willing to amend Section B as recommended as an idea by Vice Chair DeSimone to the 40 hours?
Yeah, so I will amend my motion to approve with the copy we have in front of us, including all the red lines, with the exception of modifying Section 4B to say during events that meet the criteria above for each hour worked in any given work week in excess of 35 hours and up to 40 hours. And then in the last sentence, say in any given week in excess of 40 hours. So essentially replacing 40 where 45 is now. Every other word is the same. So
Okay.
I will amend my motion. To that effect.
I'll second the amended motion.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Any further comments or discussion that hasn't been brought up yet by anyone that they
Yes.
still want to say?
I'd just like to point out that this really will end up punishing the employees. I don't see anything else. How do you look at it? If they paid for 35 hours and we're going to say, hey, 1 for 1 after 35 to 40 hours, and seasonal employees getting paid a time and a half, that's not fair. I think Commissioner Connors had the right approach. Anything over 35 hours should be 1.5 hours comp time.
Madam Chair, I agree, and I
Thank you.
think that this has been our policy, unwritten, no, but a policy that was understood by everyone who's worked here for a long time, and I don't think there's a need to make that change at this point.
Thank you. And again, not to belabor the point, but I just want to say again, one of the reasons the unwritten policy has been what it is because of some of the other flaws in our systems by no fault of our own with the capacity within this building to execute elections and, the way positions are classified and looked at. So I can't overstate that enough. I respect and understand people's concern. This is not meant to be, is not meant to be punitive or not allow people to take the time that they deserve. And with that, we have a motion and a second. And I will say all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 No?
No.
No.
No, oh, I know. I
Yeah.
thought you were saying no.
No.
You're saying aye.
You should take a roll call, Madam Chair, just so
Okay,
you know.
That's what that's what I was thinking. Okay. Commissioner Connors,
No.
Commissioner Bettenker. Commissioner
No.
Scholes. I'm a yes. Commissioner DeSimone.
Aye.
Commissioner Maderos.
No.
Commissioner Jackboni.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And the ayes have it. So you'll make that amendment, Ray? And
Yes.
then does it come back?
If that's the only amendment where we're talking about a change of the numbers from 35 to 40, I don't think this has to go back to the board. Obviously, it'll come to you when it's finished, and if there's any concern, we can put it back on a future agenda, but that is a very limited amendment that I can make without a need for you to get back involved.
Okay.
May I ask, when would this
Thank you.
become effective?
That's going to have to be a different motion.
Do we can
So
we take
I'll
that,
make a-
we can't take that today, no, if it's not outlined that way in the agenda?
So for the sake of the full board, the committee did discuss that, and that's why we have that last section that's added. That sets the time frame for, because there are some people that have over the 300 hours cap. So that allows them to dispense that time between now and the end of this year. That being said, I'll make a motion if we have to take a separate motion to make the policy effective immediately.
Right, and I think immediately, I'll second that motion, but I do think immediately means, in this case, if anyone's over those hours, for them, it's not going to take effect till January 1.
Oh, got it.
Correct?
Yes.
But
That's
I-
the way it's written.
I still don't understand the accrual process. So when do we change that? Because currently, it's been analyzed as a different time frame right now, right? So
Correct. It's been 1.5 hours per one over 35
Right.
hours.
Change now. I mean, I think the
That's
motion is to
immediately.
make it change immediately.
Yeah.
So mid-year, we're going to change the,
Well, as it's an off election year, and I know there's some small special elections happening, I don't anticipate that there'll be an excessive amount of comp time being, or like this amount, hours over the 35 being earned at the moment. So I think that we, again, also was discussed at the committee, so.
There has been very limited, just because we have 3 staff members out on medical/leave, and we've had a record number of voter registration drives and outreach. So because we have to have someone in the building, we have had a couple of hours be accrued because we have no one else to be in the building. So that person has had to work maybe 37, 38 hours in the week, which under this policy, they wouldn't get any compensation time for that. But that's limited.
So, Director or Commissioner Maderos, I should ask you first, do you have an idea of what you might make an effective date? Or Miguel, is there something, if it's not immediately, what would be an alternative date? Yeah.
What was that?
We operate on a fiscal year, right?
June
That'll be
30th, yes, is
June.
the end of the fiscal year.
I suppose that would make sense.
We're starting a new calendar, yeah.
Commissioner Jacoboni consider modifying his motion to July?
Sure, I will modify my motion to make this effective July 1st, 2025.
And I'll second that.
And under discussion, I think just from a mechanics perspective, my understanding of that would be that comp time would currently be earned as it's traditionally and historically been earned here. And then that allows anyone that as of July 1st, that is over the 300 hours to have to the end of the year to get there. So if they're under, my expectation is that they're not going to be able to earn additional, they would, so. I don't know if I'm mistaken in that assumption.
Well, it would be a reset. The reset would occur January 1, 2026, where if somebody has over, they get lowered to 300. If somebody's below 300, it just stays wherever they're at.
Yeah. Yes.
So there is a reset provision on January 1, 2026.
But as of July 1st, the rest of the provisions would be applicable. According to this motion.
Yeah,
it should
July
have passed.
1, everything, well, the formula would kick in at that time.
Could you just clarify for me then, if someone does have 300 hours on January 1st of 2026, then does that mean that they have to discharge that by when?
Well, it's
They'd have 18 months.
right, the reset is just is basically a cap. So it's to address anybody, hopefully not many people, but anybody who is above your cap of 300 has between now and December 31 to bring that number down. If they don't, it gets reset to 300.
Yeah, per section 5D,
The very end, yeah.
it states that all time must be used within 18 months from accrual date. It's a part of the logic behind that is we want people to actually use it. I don't want them to keep accruing and not have the chance to actually take it. If they're working a lot of extra hours, we want to give them the break to rest and recharge.
So the only point on that is that if someone, and I'm not talking many employees here, but if someone were at 300 on January 1st, going into an election season, in the gubernatorial election in September and November, they would have to discharge a good portion of that time between January and June if they're expected to be able to accrue any comp time in the conduct of the September general election. Either that, they'll be working, either refuse to work over the 35 hours, or they'll be working for straight time. Correct?
Yeah, that would be the cap.
For the first 5 hours, yeah.
But they would have to get on well under that 300, for example, to be able to accrue for September, November, and then they would have 18 months from November to discharge it?
Correct.
Is what I'm gathering, from November of 26?
18 months from when it was accrued. So I read that as if I worked 40 hours this week, or an employee works 40 hours this week, they'll have earned 5 hours of comp time and then have 18 months, not hours, 18 months from this week to actually discharge it, which we want people to do. That's part of the
As a-
places.
He's the only one that carries around. his-
Menu, like
Hey.
no, you know, it wasn't like the type
Well,
of
maybe
thing
they don't
where
want you
today
there.
we're eating mac and bean. Oh, no, it was menu.
That's what we have.
All menu driven, all of that.
No, Ray, I forget this every time. So we need a motion to seal the minutes of executive session, okay?
And come back into open session.
Okay. Do,
Do a separate motion.
And to
now.
resume open session.
you can do it together. How do I not know this by now? Moved and seconded, all in favor, did someone second? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And we're back in
Aye.
open session.
Sorry.
And we're back. And then just a motion to adjourn, right?
Yeah, there's nothing to.
Nothing to report, okay? So do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Assuming no one's opposed or abstaining, so the ayes have it, and we are adjourned at 4:31 PM. Thank you.